As been our tradition, I guess, recently in the last year or two with COVID, we've got an opening statement on how we deal with our meetings because they are a little bit different because we have people joining us remotely and also here in person. So I'll read the opening statement so we're all on the same page as we proceed this evening. So good evening. This is the regularly scheduled December 9th meeting of the Geneva Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Scott Stocking, the chairman of the commission. And for the benefit of those audience, I'm joined by David DeGroot, Community Development Director, Chayton Drew, he's right there. Our public hearing prescriber, and then the commissioners, Mead, Morgan, Fiskale, Slifka, and Holloman. Is Mim joining us remotely? Or? Okay, so Commissioner Mims is not here, Evans is not in. So we'll have virtual attendees who will participate via live stream meeting by accessing the link provided in the meeting agenda found on the city's website at www.geneva.il.us. For more information about meeting procedures or providing public comment, please see notice regarding meeting and public comment rule modification due to COVID-19, a link which is provided in the agenda for the meeting this evening. This evening, the commission will host 3 public hearings regarding agenda items 5A, B, and C. As chairman of tonight's meeting, I'll guide the public, applicant, and the commission through the public hearing process, which is outlined in the back of the meeting agenda. Please see this page for further details. The commission will open the public hearing for each applicant and will provide an opening statement and brief overview of their request. The commission members will then first have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments. This will be followed by a public comment and testimony regarding the requests. Audience members will be called upon virtually or in person and given an opportunity to comment. We ask that you state your name and address when it is your turn to speak. If your comment has already been made or your question has already been asked, it is not necessary to repeat it. Remind members of the public to refrain from veering off topic or direct comments that are germane to the request being considered. Following public testimony, the applicant will have an opportunity to comprehensively answer questions or respond to any comments made by members of the public. Additional questions or comments may be stated by the commission, but the public comment will not be reopened. Each public hearing may then be closed, followed by the commission deliberation on separate requests. Any person speaking during this public hearing agree and understand that anything they say will be sworn testimony and affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Agenda items 5C and 6A pertaining to the zoning map amendment and conceptual site plan reviews respectively are for the property located at 33 West 300 Illinois Route 38. The proposed zoning map amendment requires a public hearing, but the conceptual site plan review does not. However, the applicant may present both items before the commission simultaneously. Questions and comments from the commission and/or public may be made either on either agenda item during the public hearing, but commission consideration for the zoning map amendment will be focused on provided testimony germane to this request and whether or not the subject property should be rezoned to accommodate light industrial development. Furthermore, the conceptual site plan review is being presented to collect broad feedback regarding a conceptual development for the subject property. And I'd just add to that the commission sees these numerous requests for conceptual review over the course of the year. This is not unusual. The final plan and documents related to a potential development such as stormwater plans, traffic study, or landscape plans have not been developed at this time. The appropriate phase for the applicant to provide these finalized documents for city review is during formal site plan review process, which is normally the next phase of project evaluation. We strongly encourage those commenting on these items to refrain from speculation in absence of finalized documents that have yet been submitted. In order to help the quality of the meeting broadcast, I remind all commissioners must mute themselves except when they are addressing the commission. Commissioners joining virtually also need to state their name prior to speaking and provide a roll call vote to better assist our record keepers. For example, Stocking, yea, nay, or abstain. Okay, any questions? So we're going to proceed this evening. Okay, hearing none, Celeste, please call the roll.
Evans, Holloman,
Holloman here.
Madaskil,
Madaskil here.
Mead,
Mead here.
Slivka,
Slivka here.
Stocking,
Stocking here.
Moran.
Moran here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting.
Chairman, move to approve the agenda. Slivka?
Mead, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the November 11th, 2021 meeting is the next item on the agenda. Any omissions, changes?
Move to approve. Mead.
Madaskil, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we'll now move on to the public hearing items. Our first item is item 5A. It's St. Mark's Episcopal Church, variation from section 11-12.6, regulation by sign type to allow an additional second freestanding sign upon the zoning lot located at 320 Franklin Street in accordance with section 11-14-5A, sign variations of the City of Geneva zoning ordinance. The location is 320 Franklin Street. The PIN is 12-03-460-013 and 12-03-460-014. And the applicant is St. Mark's Episcopal Church.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this public hearing because I attend St. Mark's and am involved in the property committee.
Very good, thank you. Okay, with Commissioners Mead's recusal, we're able to proceed without his participation. Satan, do you have items on the record?
Yes, so the contents of this file for St. Mark's Church sign variation include an application for a sign variation filed by St. Mark's Episcopal Church dated October 28, 2021, including the following items: project narrative, response to sign variation standards, legal description, owner consent of application, location and sign designs, sign photos, list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property, affidavit attesting to the accuracy of the list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. The contents of this file also include a copy of the letter to all property owners within 500 feet providing notice of the application being filed, a certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on November 24th, 2021 for tonight's public hearing, a copy of the public hearing notice mailed to all property owners within 500 feet, and a staff report from the Community Development Department to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated December 9th, 2021. And also I did want to make a clarification and a correction to the staff report regarding this agenda item. And this will be included in the findings of fact that will go to City Council. But the first is a clarification regarding the timeline of when the signs were installed. Originally, the church had a freestanding sign on the northern portion of their property. Then they eventually, I believe in 2018 or 2019, they put up a second freestanding sign at the southern portion of their property, which would be the northeast corner of Fulton and 4th Streets. When they put that up, they had to remove the original sign that was on the northern portion of the property because our zoning code and the sign code only allows one freestanding sign per zoning lot. So they removed the original sign, put that away, and then recently they reinstalled that sign, which triggered this request for tonight, for the second sign to reinstate that original sign. The correction to the staff report involves the illumination of the signs. It was stated that the signs are not illuminated. They plan on illuminating both of the signs. The original sign is currently, I guess it has the lighting already installed, and it was lit when it was installed originally. The second one will have lighting as well.
Okay, all right, thank you for the clarifications. All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Brazel of 426 Maple Lane in Batavia, Illinois, and I'm on the vestry at St. Mark's Church, Geneva, and I am the property committee liaison. St. Mark's is the applicant for the subject sign variance application. You may recall that in 2018, St. Mark's sought and received approval for renovations and modifications to our building campus located between Franklin and Fulton Streets along 4th Street, comprising roughly half a city block in the heart of Geneva. As part of the subsequent campus expansion and renovations, St. Mark's added 2 additional primary entrances now connecting buildings near the south end of the campus. As work neared the completion, it was evident that St. Mark's desired and needed to identify those entrances, and an application for a new freestanding sign at the south end of the campus was submitted and approved. However, because St. Mark's had not included the second sign in our 2018 PUD approval package, St. Mark's was only allowed 1 freestanding sign by code unless St. Mark's returned for approval to have the original freestanding sign at the north end of the campus put back to use. At the time of the installation of the new sign at the south end of the campus, the original freestanding sign was decommissioned. That original freestanding sign at the north end of the campus and approximately 1 city block from the new freestanding sign had been the primary sign for decades for the church. Our request today is to allow for 2 freestanding signs on the St. Mark's campus, PUD, located almost 1 city block and virtually an identical size and design. We feel these signs are both attractive and serve to identify the various church entrances for parishioners, visitors, and the greater Geneva community. At approximately 25 square feet of signage, the signage is both appropriate and well within the 40 square feet of freestanding signage allowed today for the PUD within 1 sign. Each sign is approximately 5 foot by 2 foot 6 inches and rests between 2 flagstone posts, which are approximately 43 inches in overall height. These are meant to be understated but visible within respected garden areas at each end of the campus. Given the placement of the existing flagstone pillars, the requested variance represents the minimum variance which would allow for the second sign to be recommissioned on campus to assist in the property identification and wayfinding throughout. Pictures of the 2 signs and a sketch showing the size of the second sign to be recommissioned are contained within the application and staff report for your reference. As Mr. True mentioned, the recommissioned sign is lit via ground level low voltage spotlight, which is intended just to light up the sign. The existing sign at the south end of the campus, the new sign, is not directly lit, but the adjacent flagpole is lit in a similar low voltage lighting fashion. The lights are directed toward the interior of the campus, thus not exiting the campus toward neighboring properties. So I thank you for your time, and I'm available to field any questions that you might have. And along with me is the chairman of the property committee, John Bernard.
All right, any questions from the commissioners? Yes, Tim.
I just had one question. How long was the old sign up there?
The original sign?
Right. Many years?
Yes, over several decades.
I started at St. Mark's 32 years ago.
Sir, would you please approach the podium? I'm sorry. Just so everybody can hear you.
It's at least 32 years.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other, yes, Rebecca?
So I'm just making sure I'm right with the timeline. You erected the new sign in the 2018 and took down the sign, right? And then a new sign, this new sign, when was that erected?
It was erected
The second
approximately in October of this year.
And is it in the exact same place as the
exact same
first
place.
sign?
Yes. And in fact, it was mimicking the new sign on the south end of the campus, the same color.
Yeah, the sign that was put in October, it matches exactly the sign on the south end. Before, we had a different color scheme, and it changed, and
And it says exactly the same thing?
Yes.
exactly the same thing.
Okay. I'm just curious how, like if the signs differ, like one has a direction to go to this space, if you're looking for this, like it's a campus.
They're exactly the same.
Okay, so it's not like one sign tells you like this is where you go for this education, or this is where you.
No, the only thing that's informational on there are when our service times are. And
Oh, okay.
currently, they're blank because we haven't decided if we're going to have Saturday services yet, still. So
Okay.
those will go on.
And was there a reason that you did not submit an application prior to erecting the sign?
It was an oversight.
Forgot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other questions? Michael?
I just have one. So, and I don't remember specifically, when the PUD was done, was the request made to have more than one sign at that time or not?
No, no, sir. It was an oversight.
Thanks.
Anything else? Rebecca, yes?
Sorry, I'm just wondering, so I just want to be clear about what we're voting on, or if, is the sign potentially going to come down? If it, like, what, is there a,
So the request is to allow a second freestanding sign on a zoning lot. You're only allowed one freestanding sign on a zoning lot. It was installed without the required permit. The owners actually came to us when they realized that they didn't obtain the permit and said, can we apply for a variation? And we said that is an option. So they pursued that, and we held off code enforcement while they go through this variation process. If it's not approved, then yes, they would be required to take it down.
okay.
Yes, Michael?
Yeah, one other question, Dave. So it's specific to this property only, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, our variance.
Thanks.
I just had one question. Did you think about putting any signs on the structure itself as a possible option, or was that not seen as coherent enough in terms of directing people that this whole area is part of the church campus?
I don't believe that was under consideration. In terms of the aesthetics of the property, we felt that replacing the original sign in front of near the historic chapel was
Yeah.
the best option. Because that was the most, it was the sign that most people were familiar with the church. Actually, the new sign on the south end is the new player in
Right,
the sign thing.
right. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, thank you. Anyone on the public here wishing to speak on this matter? Anyone here in the council chambers who wants to speak on this matter? Okay, anybody virtually who wants to speak on this matter? In order to do that, please use the raised hand function on your application, and you will be recognized to speak. Okay, not so far. I'll ask one more time. Anyone who's listening remotely, virtually, who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function on your application so you can be recognized to speak.
Nobody.
Nope, all right, so nobody. Okay.
Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Moran,
Madaskil,
second.
second. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. Celeste, please call the roll.
Holloman?
Holloman, aye.
Madaskil, aye.
Slivka?
Slivka, aye.
Moran?
Moran, aye.
And Stocking?
Stocking.
Passes.
All right. I need a motion. Michael?
Yes, yeah, I'd be in support of the request, especially given the fact that the property has frontage on 3 public streets. I think 2 signs is more than reasonable.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think, again, they're tastefully done. The original sign obviously is an asset to the site. I wouldn't want to see that sign to leave. And because of the new structure and the fact that it is now a much larger campus, I could see a second ID needed at that corner to let people know it's part of the church. Not a resident. It could look like, it actually does look like a residence. So, I mean, if you didn't know it was, that sign's not there, I think you wouldn't know it was part of the church unless you were familiar with the area. So, I think it's reasonable. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is this appropriate time for a motion?
I believe it is.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion in accordance with Section 11-14-5A of the Geneva zoning ordinance to approve the application requesting a variation from Section 11-12-6A1, regulations by sign type, to permit more than one freestanding sign on a zoning lot on behalf of the applicant, St. Mark's Church here, contingent on completing the permit as necessary.
Slivka, second.
Moved and seconded. Celeste, please call the roll.
Okay, Holloman?
Holloman, aye.
Madaskil?
Madaskil, aye.
Slivka?
Slivka, aye.
Moran?
Moran, aye.
And Stocking?
Stocking eye.
That passes.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Gentlemen, also I do just want to remind you that this recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission will be taken to the City Council on Monday, December 20th at 7 p.m. right here in this room. And we'll reach out to you too to remind you.
All right, thank you. All right. You want to get John? Before we continue? You got it? Let Mr. Commissioner Mead join us again.
Sorry.
It's crowded up here. Okay, we'll go back. Commissioner Mead. All right, so next item on the agenda is 226 North Pine Street. That's a variation from section 11-5C-4 lot and area requirements to decrease the required street yard setback from 35.56 feet to 27.56 feet in accordance with section 11-14-5 variations of the Geneva zoning ordinance. The location is 226 North Pine Street. Its PIN number is 12-04-285-004. And the applicant is Gallagher Associates on behalf of Thomas Wagner. Jake, you have items for the record.
So the contents of this file include an application for a variation filed by Gallagher Associates on behalf of Thomas Wagner, dated October 14th, 2021, including the following items: project narrative and standards for variations, supporting document titled 2018 Remodeling Impact Report, Outdoor Features, supporting document titled Refuge and Prospect, the Front Porch, building plans, plat of survey, list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property, affidavit attesting to the accuracy of the list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. The contents of this file also include a copy of the letter to all property owners within 500 feet providing notice of the application being filed, a certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on November 24, 2021 for tonight's public hearing, a copy of the public hearing notice mailed to all property owners within 500 feet, and a staff report from the Community Development Department to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated December 9th, 2021.
All right, thank you very much. We'll hear from the applicant at this time.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for entertaining our request. I am representing Michelle Johnson and TJ Wagner, homeowners of 226 North Pine.
Sir, would
will-
you identify yourself, please?
Sure. I am Sean Gallagher, 427 Anderson Boulevard, with Gallagher Associates Architects.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So I would just like to present the project narrative and then cite the standards for variation, and then answer any questions you may have about this submittal. So the project narrative is as so. The entire project involves two open porches. We have a porch in the back and a porch in the front. The front porch is an open structure, and as Chayton had described, we are seeking a variance of 8 feet into the average setback. The home is a traditional ranch-style structure with a relatively flat front and no covered entry or outdoor space for the owners. The property is in Area 1, which requires that the front yard setback be dictated not by the R1 district standard of 25 feet, but by the average setback of the neighboring homes. As this home is on a corner, the only home that applies to the average is the home to the south, which is at 220 North Pine. This home sits 35.56 from its front property line. Thus, the setback for Michelle and TJ's home is 35.56. The portion of the home to which we intend to add the open porch sits 35.42 feet from the front property line. So, Michelle and TJ's home sits just about 2 inches into the average setback of the house next door. The new open porch is being designed to be 7 foot 10 inches deep and maintain or at the main entry, and 6 foot 8 inches deep in the area plan for seating. You'll notice in the drawings you had this piece that sort of pokes out a little bit that defines the main entry, sort of frames the front door, and then there's a piece that recedes back a little bit that's for seating. It should be noted that this proposed porch will be an open porch and will not and cannot be an enclosed structure. For standards of variation, reasonable return. Due to the average setback of the neighboring property, there would be no opportunity to construct a front porch without a variance. The addition of a porch does add value to a home in terms of a financial benefit. We did attach a document that was specifically cited by Chayton, by the National Association of Realtors, that does cite curb appeal upgrades like porches can add as much as 60 to 90% of a return on investment. But the thing that I want to cite more appropriately is that aside from the financial benefit of a front porch, it could be argued that there is an even greater value added to the community. To quote mid-18th century or mid-1800s English landscape architect Andrew Jackson Downing, a house without a front porch is as insignificant as a book without a title page. The front porch is the place where we have opportunity to be part of our community, where we can sit and watch and participate in the lives of our neighbors. The attached article, Refuge and Prospect, The Front Porch by Beth Ann Fennelly, notes that the trend for new homes to have front porches has grown from 42% in 1994 to 65% of new homes having front porches in 2016. Builders see value in the investment of a porch, and municipalities are embracing the value of the culture of their communities by encouraging porches. It's certainly worth noting that our own city of Geneva has given relief to certain zoning districts in the downtown, allowing porches to be constructed as much as 8 feet into the front yard setback. A great step towards getting us out of our homes and engaging in our neighborhoods. Unique hardship or practical difficulty. The construction of Michelle and TJ's home predates current zoning requirements, placing their home in violation of the average setback of the neighboring residents. Interestingly enough, the construction of most of the homes along the west side of North Pine observe nearly identical front setbacks. So any home wishing to construct a porch would ultimately require a variance. It is worth noting that a few of the neighbors along that side are interested in just such a thing. Another point of interest is that if the neighboring property of Michelle and TJ's was vacant, their front yard setback would default to the R1 district standard of 25 feet, a little more than 10 feet closer to Pine than dictated by the average. All of this to say that per current zoning requiring that the average of the neighboring homes set the front setback, Michelle and TJ are prohibited from constructing a front porch without the provision of a variance. Character of the area. The current home at 226 North Pine is fairly flat, with very little character or street appeal. Currently, entry to the home is by way of a concrete stoop with no additional protection given to a visitor other than the depth of the existing roof soffit projection. The proposed porch employs 2 massing elements that project forward from the home, helping to give additional texture and character to the existing residence. The entry piece projects forward from the seating area to help give definition to the front door, and the arched open gable allows view and light from a decorative ceiling hung light fixture. The seating area is set up to have a shed roof, which will be clad with standing seam metal to again provide additional texture and character to the elevation. In light of these changes to the front of the home, the character of the area, it could be argued, should be enhanced by the new porch. In addition, having Michelle and TJ actively participating in the neighborhood by enjoying a beautiful day on their front porch could also be argued as a valuable addition to the character of the neighborhood. Minimum variance. The proposed porch structure projects 7 foot 10 inches from the entry component and 6 foot 8 inches for the porch seating area. The available space for utilizing the porch for seating is at its minimum. Clear floor space for seating will end up at around 6 feet. Any smaller in furniture and space to maneuver would be impractical. We're grateful for your willingness to hear us out, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions? Adam?
I guess I just have one quick question. It was mentioned, you had mentioned, and this might be for city staff, if the neighboring property was vacant, it would default to R1, which is a 25-foot setback? Is that correct?
Can we verify that?
Check it.
That's all I have.
Okay.
I believe the district standard is 25 feet, but because it's in Area 1, it defaults to the averages of the neighbors. Yeah.
And you have only one neighbor?
Correct, yeah, it's a corner lot. Yep.
That's correct, Adam. If the neighboring lot is vacant, you use the district standard, which is 25 feet. And because it's a corner lot, there's not another property to create an average with, so it would default to that 25-foot standard.
Thanks for that clarification. Yes, John?
Mr. Chairman, curious, there's a house just to the north on Ford.
I did that project.
Okay. Do you happen to know what that setback is for that porch? Because that was done, it was fixed and flipped, and then the current owner bought it and added the porch, I believe, so.
Ms. Goodyear was the tenant that did the work on that.
Okay.
That setback is slightly different because it defaults to 25 feet because it is not the primary street front. So the primary street front is the narrowest portion of that, which is technically Pine, even though her
Really?
front faces Ford.
Okay, okay. Do you happen to know just for yucks, what the setback is to the front of the porch?
It probably, I'd have to check a drawing.
Okay. It's
It's
not that
definitely more than
important. I
20.
just noticed that was porch activity in the
Right.
area. So-
Right. I know it's more than 25 feet, but I don't know
Okay.
exactly. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yep.
And this will be 27 and a half feet, basically.
Correct, right, yep.
Yeah. Anybody else? No one? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, anybody here in the audience at City Hall wishes to speak on this matter? Anyone here tonight in City Hall wishes to speak on this? I don't see any, so I will ask the virtual audience. Anybody who's online who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function on your application and you will be recognized to speak. Okay, I'm saying nobody's there, so I'll ask one more time. Anyone that's virtually attending this meeting who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raised hand function on your application so you can be recognized to speak. All right, there aren't anyone else? Okay. So, it's
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
moved and seconded. Celeste, please call the roll.
Holloman, aye.
Metaskill,
Madaskil, aye.
Mead,
Mead, aye.
Slivka,
Slivka, aye.
Moran,
Moran, aye.
and Stocking.
Stocking eye.
Passes.
Thank you. So,
You know, if you look down Pine, I mean, it's amazing how straight these home fronts are, and I think having a little variance in texture, so to speak, would enhance the street appeal and curb appeal of this house, not only this house, but the neighborhood, and may create some more activity and more investment in this area of Pine Street, frankly, and I find that appealing.
the porch is minimum. It's not a big porch. So it's not, like they're trying to put a gigantic porch in the house. So it's a minimum request. So that meets the criteria as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you look down Pine Street and try to put in perspective how far it would be out relative to the existing stoop, it has a minimal effect on the setback, so.
Particularly since the setback's going to be 2.5 feet bigger than the default setback in town or in residential areas.
You just got caught because they're a corner lot, so the quirk of the ordinance is a hardship. My view, so. Anybody else? No?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a variance to decrease the required street yard setback from 35.56 feet to 27.56 feet at the property located at 226 North Pine Street, subject to the findings of fact contained in the staff report.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Celeste?
Holloman,
Holloman, aye.
Metaskill,
Madaskil, aye.
Mead,
Mead, aye.
Slivka,
Slivka, aye.
Moran,
Moran, aye.
and Stocking.
Stocking eye.
That passes.
Thank you. Jane, when is it going?
So this recommendation will also go to City Council on Monday, December 20th at 7 PM right here in the City Council chambers.
All right, thank you for your, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so we'll proceed with our final item on tonight's agenda. It's item C, Geneva Route 38 Logistics Center. It's a zoning map amendment from the B4 Business District to the I1 Light Industrial District. The location is 33 West 300 Illinois Route 38. The pin on that is 12-01-426 and 019 and 12-12-200-021. And the applicant is Duke Realty. Hang on a second. Satan, please read it in the record.
So the contents of this file include an application for a zoning map amendment filed by Duke Realty Limited Partnership dated October 5th, 2021, including the following items: project narrative, response to zoning map amendment standards, Alta NSPS land title survey, land use opinion application, Kane County road impact fee application, purchase and sale agreement, legal description, list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property, affidavit attesting to the accuracy of the list of property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. The contents of this file also include a copy of the letter to all property owners within 500 feet providing notice of the application being filed, a certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on November 24th, 2021 for tonight's public hearing, a copy of the public hearing notice mailed to all property owners within 500 feet, and a staff report from the Community Development Department to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated December 9th, 2021.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. My name is Josh Bauer. I'm here on behalf of Duke Realty, reside at 1050 Knollwood Road in Deerfield, Illinois. We are here this evening seeking a map amendment to rezone the property at 33 West 300 Illinois Route 38 from B4 to I1. With me this evening are Dan Ubelar from Duke, Joe Abel from Joe Abel and Associates, and Neil Steffens from HLR Engineering. You'll hear from them in a little bit. Just to give you a real quick background on Duke. Duke is the largest domestic-only logistics REIT in our business, and we develop, redevelop, and acquire logistics real estate facilities and key logistics nodes in 19 markets in the U.S. We've got a map to show you where those markets are. You can see that Chicago is a tier 1 market. We own just over 17 million square feet of industrial in the market. Duke was founded in 1972, IPO'd in 93, traded on the S&P 500. We own 533 facilities encompassing 160 million square feet throughout the United States. And I'll add, one of the big things for Duke is sustainability, ESG. We build all of our buildings LEED certified. We are long-term holders of real estate. We are not merchant developers. We do not build to make an immediate profit and sell. We still own the first building that we've ever developed in this market. We're not chasing a tenant here, have a hidden agenda. This is a speculative industrial building that we'll speak to further on in the concept level at the next stage of the next item on the agenda. So ultimately, we're here to rezone this property from B4 to I1. The rezone will ultimately allow this sort of underutilized land site to be developed. It's obviously struggling with the current B4 zoning, and we recognize that with rezones, not always is every single person in the community going to be happy about it, but we think that this makes sense. We've studied the comprehensive plan. We've studied all of the factors of zoning. This particular site here, in between Kirk and Couts, in that east of Kirk Road area in the comprehensive plan, specifically is earmarked for, primarily developed for industrial, warehouse, and distribution business and research park and other similar uses. We think it makes a ton of sense. We hope you'll agree. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Abel, who's going to get into a little bit deeper on just the land use and the comp plan.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Abel, as was mentioned. I'm a planning and zoning consultant. I've been doing this for about 50 years. I have a degree in city and regional planning with a minor in architecture, done economic development, graduate work. And I'm very, very familiar with this property. I was director of planning for DuPage County for 17 years, developed the first comprehensive plan. We were very careful to make sure we did that plan in conjunction with Phil Buss, who was director of planning for Kane County at that time. So the two counties worked very closely together to make sure that what was planned for the inner parts of the county would be appropriate even at the edges. And in fact, we, in the county plan, went a mile beyond our borders, so we actually did work in the city of Geneva area as part of the development of that comprehensive plan for DuPage County. So I am very familiar with the property. In fact, I go past the property at least 6 times a year for the last 20 years. So I'm familiar with what's happening in this particular area. What I want to do is just go into the standards very quickly, since you're familiar with the area. And what I prepared was an existing land use and zoning exhibit, which has been passed out. My feeling has always been that one picture is worth 1,000 words. And so there are 4 standards that have to be met to rezone the subject property from the B4 district to the I1 district. And as you can see, I put both the first standard is the proposed project consists of existing uses of property within the general area of the property in question, consistent with the projects in the area. Probably the most dominant project in the area is the Geneva Business Park, which is a planned unit development. And you can see there is entirely zoned I-1 plus the areas that are to the south of Illinois Route 38. There's additional industrial development. And then directly south of the subject property to the south is what I call highway commercial type uses. You've got the lumber liquidators, Sherman-Williams, American Science, and Surplus, a very famous place in the area. But these are all uses that are in the B3 zoning in Kane County, but they are compatible with the industrial zoning and use on the north side. You can see directly to the east is the Couts Farm. This is a facility that primarily it's farming, but it is organic farming outside. They produce a tremendous amount of product, and they originally gave that to the Northern Illinois Food Bank, but they now give it to a food bank in Geneva for better distribution. Directly going east to the corner, again, is agriculture. But in terms of the comprehensive plan, which I will get into in a little bit, that entire area from the subject property, the western part of the subject property, over to Couts Road and then up north, everything is indicated on the comprehensive plan as future industrial development. The zoning pretty much speaks for itself. The land use in this particular area pretty much falls in line. As you can see, the underlying land use and the zoning districting pretty much follow almost exactly as they are, except for to the west, there's a residential area. There's 2 lots within a residential area that abut the western edge of the subject property. That, for some reason, is still zoned F in Kane County. The Midwest Computer Products facility, which is The remainder of the property on the western border, again, is B3 and is a continuation of the business that goes all the way to Kirk Road. So from a land use and planning standpoint, it's appropriate to bring down the I-1 zoning classification all the way down to Route 38 out to Couts Road. Then in terms of going from the specific to just look at the planning that's taking place in this entire area. When you look to the east, again, obviously, you have the DuPage Airport. That set a pattern in terms of why this area through the years has developed as industrial. As you go south of 38, you have the West Chicago Airport District. Again, you can see that there's existing facilities there, and at the moment there are two major developments on either side of the existing shore packaging that are under development for similar type industrial uses. Then I also looked at your southeast sub-area plan, which was recently developed. And that's in that area that's indicated on this exhibit as Keene County F. And again, part of the area to the east is zoned I-1 presently within the city, and the entire area between the existing corporate limits and the West Chicago Airport District eventually is all scheduled for industrial type development. So your planning program starting in 2002, where you developed your goals and policies and standards and established the subject property as industrial. Now that trend of development and character of the area has been extended in your most recent planning program into that southeast area. So in effect, you have an entire area as shown on this exhibit when you go east of Kirk Road all the way into West Chicago. In fact, if you went beyond the exhibit here, again, you'd be into heavy industrial in West Chicago. So you're going from the heavy industrial to the airport development and then back into the I-1 district in the city of Geneva. So it's not only site-specific, but the entire area, trend of development, character is all there, which in my professional opinion indicates that the plan that you've prepared isn't an appropriate, the plan which indicates I-1 is an appropriate use for the property. I think what I did with this exhibit was to take care of the fact that the subject property, the rezoning of the subject property would be consistent with the existing land use in the area. It would be consistent with the zoning that's in the area now, and then the zoning that would be in place to implement both of your plans, the comprehensive plan and the more recent sub-east plan. The only other standard of those three is the one indicating that is the proposed zoning classification of the project consistent with the uses permitted under the existing zoning classification as well as the proposed zoning qualification. And there, my answer is no. The subject property is currently zoned B4. Business under the ordinance of the City of Geneva, it being utilized currently as farm and agricultural land. And that's, I forgot to mention, that's exactly what's happening on the property now. Just vacant buildings primarily and agriculture. Farming is not the highest and best use for the parcel of land. And the highest and best use, I feel, is what's is consistent what has been designated on your comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan went very carefully into a whole series of goals and policies. And one of the key policies was mentioned at the very beginning of this, and that is that there should be additional industrial development east of Kirk Road. That was probably the most important of the goals, and after that it goes into encouraging additional employment, opportunities, increasing the tax base. All of those are important. But from the standards standpoint, it's the surrounding land use, the surrounding zoning, and probably the most important as a city planner, the comprehensive plan that you prepared. I was originally going to talk about highest and best use, some of the cell factors, but that's not anything that you require. But one of the standards for highest and best use under LaSalle is the care with which the municipality has prepared its plan. And it was obvious to me that the job that you've done over the years is excellent, and the product that you developed is appropriate, and in my professional opinion, does represent the rezoning of the subject property to the I-1 zoning would be the highest and best use for this subject property. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Neil Steffens. I'm an employee of HLR Engineering. I've been a real estate appraiser for more than 40 years. Most of that time has been running my own appraisal firm based in Elgin. And for the last about 12 years, I've been an employee of the engineering firm. My appraisal experience has been primarily in the metropolitan area. I'm a licensed general appraiser. I am a member of the Appraisal Institute and have the MEI designation. I've been approved by the Appraisal Institute as an instructor for various appraisal courses. I've taught, for years, I have taught appraisal classes for the Illinois chapter of the Appraisal Institute at their facility in Chicago. I'm a past president of the the Illinois chapter of the Appraisal Institute. I was asked by Duke Engineering to take a look at this project and form an opinion as to what probable impact would there be on this development in nearby properties. The way I went about doing this is taking a look at the property, considering the neighboring uses, looking at the current zoning for the property, and looking at the comprehensive plan. An opinion on any appraisal assignment, the starting point for an appraiser is really to look at what's the highest and best use of this property. And highest and best use is really a very simple concept. It's just that use which returns the highest value to the property. In order to eliminate uses, as an appraiser, I look at a number of different categories to try and narrow it down to a final decision on highest and best use. With what's been said and what's been shown already, the only two possibilities with respect to this project are an industrial use according to what zoning is being asked for, or the present zoning, a commercial use with the B4 zoning. My opinion on what the highest and best use for the property is kind of depends on the outcome of the question of should this property be rezoned or not. Either it stays B4 or it is changed to an industrial use. And so my opinion is going to be different depending on which course this takes. If the zoning is approved to change to industrial zoning, my highest and best use of the property would be to develop it with an industrial use in accordance with the zoning classifications and meeting the requirements of those requirements. I believe the proposed project will do that. I think that this project then is compatible, has been shown, is compatible with the neighborhood and is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. On the other hand, my wording would be different for the highest and best use if it stays with the current zoning classification. In this case, my wording would be something like this. I believe the highest and best use of this property would be to hold for future development at a time when appropriate zoning, future industrial development when appropriate zoning can be obtained. My reasons for saying this are the trend of development in the area. The demand for industrial properties has been growing not only locally but statewide and nationally. And also, there has been a demonstrated very strong demand for industrial use, but not so much for commercial use according to the B4 classification. And this is in accordance with the comprehensive plan as well. If the current zoning stays the same, hold for future development with that. The reasons for saying this is the demonstrated demand for industrial use and the lack of demand for commercial use of this property. I spoke with the broker that has the listing information or the listing for this property. The property has been on the market since the year 2015. Neil Johnson is the broker that I talked with, and he indicated that until the last year or so, there was virtually no interest in this property. During this year, there has been 2 or 3 previous offers that were made on the property, but for some reason or other during their due diligence, these prospective buyers backed out or found another property that was more suitable or did something else, decided on some other reason, but they all fell through. Another factor that would be considered in looking at this is simply the marketing history of this property itself. And in talking with Neil Johnson on this, I asked him who are the people that have been interested in this property. And he indicated that virtually every one of the prospective buyers for this property had been interested for an industrial use. And so I think this is appropriate based on the comprehensive plan, what has already been presented to you. I don't see how, as an appraiser, I could conclude that the highest and best use is anything other than for a future industrial development. In summary, I don't think that this project will have an adverse effect on nearby properties. In fact, I think it will promote development according to the comprehensive plan and encourage such development. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for this gentleman?
I think we're going to continue with the presentation.
Yeah. But I didn't have any questions. Just hang on a second. We'll get it.
So just to wrap us up, we're trying to be as transparent as possible with regards to the rezone and what we're ultimately looking to do, which is why we came forward with our concept site plan, if we are successful with a rezone, so that you have full transparency in what we are looking to do with the property. So with that, I think that will conclude our presentation on the rezone, and then we'll look forward to talking to you about the concept site plan at the next portion of the hearing.
All right. So any questions that have been up? Rebecca, you had a question, I think.
Actually got a question about I just wanted to really understand the by right development piece of to make sure I am getting, if the zoning changes, if you could just talk about that, David, or Chayton?
Yeah. So a by right development would be a development that would come before the city that meets the current zoning ordinance and is compliant with the zoning laws of the city of Geneva. So if a by right development were to come forward and it meets the setbacks, it meets all the requirements, there's no public hearing required, and that goes through site plan review, which will, staff will review all the finalized documents that will eventually be brought before the planning and zoning and city council, and they will have an opportunity to make comments on that, but there will be no public hearing associated with that. David, I don't know if you want to add anything, but that's essentially what a by right development is.
It's a permitted use within the zoning district as it's listed in the ordinance that complies with all the district regulations like setbacks, lot coverage, building height. Any new development requires site plan review, so it is a public meeting where the commission and the council have an opportunity to make suggested revisions that maybe result in better traffic patterns on site or better screening of dumpster locations, whatever it might be. But it is a by right development.
So if I'm understanding, so with the zoning change to the light industrial, and this organization came forward, they met all the zoning requirements and things like that, there would be nothing to say this isn't the right business or the right use, they just would come on in.
Right. We wouldn't have any grounds to deny it.
There would be
Right.
no more public hearing or testimony or anything like that.
Right, I mean, there would be an opportunity for public comment on the site plan review, but not a public hearing with cross-examination
not.
and, right.
And so without having any idea really of, I mean, we're gonna look at a concept review, that would just be it, like, it could just move forward without, like, there's no listed purpose for the building at this point.
Right, and that could be the
Not
case
known.
for a special use, as we saw recently too, where we don't know exactly who the end user might be. Speculative development is permissible.
Right, so then if it did change, then any other business as well would be able to come forward and say, no, we want that property and take it away from them. Is that, so once zoning changes? Or does that mean that they kind of get first crack?
Because I'm not understanding the question.
So Duke Realty is trying to purchase the property.
Right.
So potentially, if they felt that they wanted to sell the property to a different buyer to develop it in a different way that meets the permitted uses in the I-1 district and the zoning standard setback lot area, then that could happen. So potentially, if Duke Realty did not move forward with the project, a different end user could purchase a property and put a different development that's, different from the conceptual site plan that's presented later.
Okay.
So basically, what we're dealing with right now is the use, so moving it from a commercial permitted set of uses to a permitted set of industrial uses.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering, it's hard for me to, I guess, square, if we agree to the change of the zone, then we're basically agreeing to the concept without really knowing, is that, am I understanding that correctly? I mean, you're not gonna purchase the property without having the zoning change, right?
That's correct. So we will only purchase this property if we have a zoning change. And I understand and appreciate all of your comments. What I can tell you in the hopes of giving you some comfort with this is Duke is a REIT, and our structure is that we really can't sell property, especially within the first 4 years. Tax law prohibits REITs from doing that. You might pay huge penalties. Again, I mean, we don't sell. The purpose is not to rezone this to industrial and then pull a quick one and sell it to someone to come in and build their own building. We have plans. You're working on plans. We have our engineers with us. We're committed to moving forward on a speculative industrial building.
So you'll lease it out.
And lease it out. I mean, back in the day when construction wasn't the way it was and lead times weren't the way it was easier to attract tenants and bring them sort of with us. Obviously, you've seen other instances where you've had tenants in tow for developers. It's a long ways away in many instances from being able to put a shovel in the ground and complete a building due to construction delays. It's very hard for a lot of tenants to commit to a site when they know the building's not going to be built for 2 years. So what we try to do and others do is we will look at a site. We think the site makes a ton of sense for industrial. We'll work on a site plan that provides ultimate flexibility based on the site, the location. We see this as a light industrial site. We do not see this as a heavy industrial site. You'll see on the concept plan we've got, we call it single load, but it's not cross dock. It's a single load facility, meaning the purpose of it is not for bulk distribution, tons of trucks. That's how we see it. That's how we're going to build it. And ultimately, the tenants that we're going to attract are probably going to be light industrial users. We can't say for sure because we don't know.
Right.
No one's knocked on our door yet, especially we don't own it yet. But that's who we are trying to attract. Businesses within the area, create jobs, create more retail spending because they work in the area. That's who we're after with this.
Okay.
Any other questions to the applicant?
I just got one question for
Yes,
the
Aaron.
applicant. As far as, you know, you had mentioned about a single load versus a cross dock, if you could just educate me a little bit on what are the benefits and what type of end users, you know, require a single load versus what's more beneficial for a cross dock
Sure.
type of facility?
Yeah, so generally speaking, users that want cross-dock facilities are huge distribution type users. They put a ton of product into the building and out of the building. So what does that mean? That means that trucks are coming in, they're dropping off product, and then the warehouse is taking that product, organizing it, you know, everyone does it a little bit differently, but then a new set of trucks is coming into the other side of the building, taking that product and taking it elsewhere. So ultimately, a cross-dock building, and this isn't always the case, but cross-dock buildings have more trucks, they have more activity, they're just heavier uses versus a single load facility, which is, and everyone uses them differently, but most of the time it's warehousing. They have a lot of product that they want to have in this location so that they can meet, you know, distribution and fulfillment needs, but it's not bulk. So they've got they've got the docks on one side, the product's in there, they've got trucks that come and pick it up, but it's the velocity is lower. So that's, you know, that's what we're building. I would think that would be, I would hope that would be more aligned with what, you know, as a community, what you might want here, because I think just from being in this business a long time, you know, bulk, heavy cross-dock truck uses are never the most attractive. So, you know, that's just another reason why we thought this particular property made sense for our concept site plan that you'll see soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Yes, Tim?
I just had a comment, just to clarify. Agreeing to the zoning amendment is in no way passing judgment on whether or not we agree with the building plan. That is way down the road.
Right.
All we're being asked to do is change this from a B4 to an I1.
That's correct.
So whether we like the idea or hate the idea has no relevance particularly to this vote. Do we think the zoning is better off at light industrial than B4? That's what we're being asked. That's the only thing we're being asked to pass judgment on.
That's correct, yes.
Mike?
Mike?
I think the implication, though, is that if we agree to that, it's going to be purchased immediately by you, right? And so we are sort of, I know we're saying it's very far down the road, but that's what it is, right?
Yeah, and obviously staff and the community and the city will see all of our plans. You know, I think the thought would be if the plans all comply with ordinances, there's no variances, we meet setbacks, we meet landscaping, we meet all of the requirements, I think the hope would be that you would all be pleased. But yes, I mean, this is a bifurcated process with zoning, and then site plan approval would ultimately be the next step in the process.
Any other questions? Yes,
Just
sir.
got a couple questions for city staff. Just to be clear, the B4 zoning district is a Geneva zoning classification, correct? And then the adjacent parcel, which is noted as B3, is a Kane County Business District zoning classification? Can you tell me, like, the differences? Are they pretty much aligned as far as what's entitled to be able to be put on those parcels? Does anybody know?
I don't
Is there a
think,
lot of difference in their business district versus what Geneva deems as a business district?
I'm not too educated in Kane County's zoning classifications, but I know, you know, several business uses are allowed in the Geneva B4 district, but with Kane County, I don't think David and I are very familiar with it. David might have a
Can you
better
just
idea.
clarify for me, at least on the B4 for Geneva, like what are the approved uses for a B4 Geneva?
I have the zoning.
Sorry.
ordinance pulled up, so. I mean, I don't know if we want to list all of them, but,
More retail-oriented businesses, those types of things,
More
is
of
that
an
correct?
auto-oriented commercial district.
And Couts Farm, the adjacent land, what does Couts Farm do as far as a business? And then we might get down that path in a moment here, but can somebody tell me what Couts Farm does? Or what, are they an actual farm? Do they grow things? Do we know?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I believe it's
the gentleman
organic produce.
said that.
Yeah, I happened to talk to the gentleman just today. As I mentioned, I've known this property for a long time. Years ago, they were selling sports cars. I don't know if any of you remember that, on that property.
For a long time.
That ended, he said, about 5 years ago. But today, it's a specialized farming. It's organic, it's hydroponic, and they, as I said, they actually give the food away to food banks.
They're a nonprofit.
They were giving it to the Northern Illinois Food Bank, but because it's so perishable, the Illinois Food Bank services a much larger area, and so the food wasn't getting out fast enough. So now they give it almost exclusively. So it's a specialized, I would call almost commercial farming. It's not like the area further to the east where you can see it's just the tilling of the soil and growing of a crop. So there's a substantial number of metal buildings on the property, and as far as I'm concerned, it would be a reasonable land use to have adjacent to the use that hopefully will be on this property. Again, as we mentioned, what we're talking about this evening is what is the most appropriate zoning classification.
Sure.
You have to assume that you've carefully gone through your M1 district and the uses that are in there you feel are appropriate. So for some reason, some other use should go there. But based on the company you're dealing with, they know exactly what they want to put on this property, and I'm sure that 5 years from now, we'll all say, yeah, that's what wound up on the property. The one slide that I didn't show, can we show the comprehensive plan just one more time? I think what I tried to do is to facilitate, to show that there is a definite trend of development and character in this entire portion of the city of Geneva, and then carrying over into West Chicago. And it clearly shows on this exhibit, because other than the highway-type commercial between the railroad and Route 38, almost everything in that area is light industrial and research. And that's really what is appropriate for this particular piece of property. It's too deep for highway commercial. And if you look at the exhibit that I prepared, you'll notice that all of the buildings to the north of the subject property that are within your business park, and I think at some point, I'm sure the business park assumed that the subject property would also be zoned I-1 and part of it. But you can see, it was interesting when they were talking about the single loaded and double loaded. If you look at the uses there, the Green Corps Corp up to the north, same thing, just in and out on one side. Northern Illinois Food Bank is the same. You can look at all those uses throughout the industrial park, and they all fall in that category of high-quality industrial type uses. Anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, Mr. Abel. One more quick question for you. So, based on what you're telling me about Couts Farm, so are they a non-conforming use in the B3 zoning district in Kane County then?
No, they're a permitted use.
They're permitted use as a farm then?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? Okay, I don't think we have any further questions at this time. We'll open it up for public comment. All right, anybody here in the audience who wishes to speak on this matter? Anyone at all here in City Hall wishes to speak on this rezoning request? All right, there's one gentleman.
Hi, my name's Hendrik Reich. I'm a resident on 674 Green Meadow Lane. My thought about this, what I want to bring to record is, first of all, I appreciate the approach. I kind of wish we would have had this presentation and everything ahead of time. I also appreciate the question from the commissioners here to really see that we're not opening a use for this land before we actually know what is coming in, because I think based on what happened last month, we're all a little bit sensitive on the east side here. And I think what it comes down to for us is I'm leaning towards, yes, this may be good, but I think there are a lot of unknowns. So I would ask you to make sure you do your due diligence and that we can trust your decision here. And if you feel like you do not have all of the answers, I know I wouldn't today, that we maybe postpone a decision on this until everyone's a little more comfortable. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. David Walenziak, 578 Lexington Drive in Geneva. I don't have a problem with the light industrial. I think this is the appropriate area. It's away from residential. The only question I would have, and I'm very happy that you defined what a cross stock is, and that you're hoping not to build something like that on this property. The only question I have is, if you give them the okay today to make this a I-1, can they change the plans to make it into a cross stock or something like that? I don't think you could fit it in there. But that's, you know, what control does the city still have? You know, we see the initial concept, and it looks good. It's tight. I mean, you fit a lot on the small piece of property, but what control does the city have to approve or disapprove on whether or not they want to totally change the plan? It may still meet your letter of the law as far as what all the specifications and rules are, but what if they, you know, again, go to a cross-dock facility instead of this? Again, I don't think you can on this space, but that's the only concern I have. Otherwise, I think it's a good fit. But I think, again, like Hendrick said, I think we need to know more. Or at least in the future to be able to see what they're doing. And I'm very, very glad that they're open about this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else wishing, here in City Hall, wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, I don't see anyone, so we'll go to public on the virtual. So if you're watching online, virtually, if there's anyone wishing to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function on your application and you can be recognized to speak.
The commission now calls upon Carl Batchke. Carl, please unmute yourself and proceed to your testimony.
Yes, my name is Carl Batchke, 538 Lexington Drive in Geneva. As I've looked at this plan and the site, I do agree that this an I-1 industrial district does fit for this use. So I would support that change in the zoning. But I share some of the comments that have come from the public that we also need to be mindful of how I-1 is applied in the city of Geneva. And I would ask that the Planning and Zoning Committee keep that in mind as they're looking at site plans and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else listening remotely who wishes to speak on this matter, use the raise hand function so you can be recognized. Okay, and being told no one else is online. One more time, anyone online who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function so you can be recognized to speak. All right, so we don't have anybody else online. Don't believe that anyone else here in City Hall wishes to speak.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Rebecca.
I was curious about the residential portion. Like how many residents, how many homes, if somebody could sort of describe that area to me, like just the context of how, I mean, if you live there, how close is this facility going to be?
So Elm Road is located to the west of the subject property. So Elm Road has, I'm not sure, I'm just eyeballing it, I'd say about a dozen single-family homes along that, that dead end, I guess. There are currently 2 single-family residences that back up to the subject property. The distance, I'm not exactly sure what that distance is, but, you know, there would be landscaping requirements for any development to help, you know, that transitional setback. We have a requirement for a transitional setback with vegetation and everything to kind of create that barrier to make incompatible uses more compatible with that,
Right.
You know, those features in the landscape requirements.
And then they were all sent notices about this hearing, this thing happening here this evening?
Yes. So they were actually sent 2 rounds of notices. So
Okay.
we sent an initial notice to them when we accepted the application for review by city staff. And then there was another notification sent out when the public hearing was scheduled for this evening. And we've posted it on our development page and we've sent out notifications. There was also another posting in the local newspaper as well. And I think the newspaper today, it was the Kane County Chronicle, ran a story on it, so.
Okay. I mean, I saw there was just the one letter that came in, no other, the one that you sent, yeah, from Mr. Couts.
Yes, that's,
Yeah, and the public comments.
yeah, and I just checked my email. I believe that was the only written comment that we've received on this item.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Moran, second.
Moved and seconded. Celeste?
Sullivan, aye.
Madaskil, aye.
Mead, aye.
Slivka, aye.
Moran, aye.
Stocking eye. All right. Thoughts?
My thoughts are that some good points were raised this evening. I think that, as Tim pointed out, Commissioner Moran, our charge right now is defining what's the best zoning for this parcel, and is I-1 appropriate? And I think generally everyone agrees, the public agrees. They ask us to be mindful as we get into the next stage of our agenda, when the applicant will benefit from commentary and guidance as to what they're conceptually planning, and taking that back and hopefully respecting that and using that in coming up with a final design. So as I sit here today, I'm supportive of the change, so.
I would echo Commissioner Mead's comments. The testimony today here comes from not only a land use developer, but from his history, one of the groundbreaking land use developers in DuPage in conjunction with Kane County. His comments are supported by a 40-year MAI appraiser who testified that the highest and best use would be an I-1, but if not, it would be a holding pattern, and would still be some form of light industrial development. Some points have been brought out about the potential building. They're all valid, but we are not compelled just by virtue of approving the zoning change to approve the building or the site plan. That will become our charge. We take it seriously. We took it very seriously the last time a major structure was proposed. The voices were heard, comments were taken, but in this instance, I think the applicant has made their case that the highest and best use is light industrial, I-1 industrial, and I, like Commissioner Mead, would support that variance, your zoning change.
Okay. Mike?
Yes, and I would agree with just about everything that's been said. You know, as Chayton mentioned, as it relates to the adjacent residential area, only a very small area is being impacted by this site. Most of it is already adjacent to an I-1 use, so Yeah, I'd be in agreement with moving forward.
Any other comments?
Okay.
I
Go ahead, go ahead, Rebecca.
I agree with this, the I-1. I do feel like that's the appropriate zoning. I'm a little bit shy of just that it's tied to something that we could have input on, but like you said, Commissioner Mead, hopefully they would, go with, our recommendations, but it feels like if we agree to one thing, we're sort of agreeing, as long as they're within in the zoning requirements that we're sort of agreeing to something that we,
Well, I'll put out one other thing that's a possibility. So, I mean, in terms of the size of the property, that limits, to some extent, the intensity of the use that you can put on it. So, you can kind of look at it in that fashion, is that, it's restricted somewhat just because of its configuration size. So, the intensity of the use in there is probably not likely to be.
we don't know. I mean, I
We
just,
don't know.
I
We
hear
don't
the
know
public
for
comments,
sure.
and I just wonder if it's not a tiny bit premature.
We don't know, but as a practical matter, it would be extremely difficult to do something very intense on that site in an I-1 use, just in general.
In another
In
point.
general, I can't say for sure, but in
Right.
general, it would be difficult.
Right. As the applicant said, there was a day in industrial development when you'd have a tenant in tow. Today, there's not many tenants, given the conditions, our economy and our world that are in today, that tenants are hand in hand with the developer. So they're going to develop a spec building. And that will be the case a year from now, probably, and 2 years from now, that you're not going to have, when a zoning request is brought forward, you're not going to know who that end user is, but you'll know that unless they satisfy all the criteria for building height, setbacks, parking, landscaping, everything else, that is crafted to insulate and allow this property to be a good neighbor to other properties, they can't go forward with something. So I take comfort in that, so.
Yeah, they've done their due diligence in terms of the size of the building and what can be carried based on the use. So, I mean, I think we'll see some of that in the next, when they do the concept review.
I would add that, a code-compliant or by-right development requiring site plan review does not mean it's automatically accepted by the commission or the city council. It's, I think, more challenging to deny that application if they comply with the zoning ordinance. But there are standards the commission is challenged at looking at: access to the site, stormwater management, landscaping, signage. All of those things should be reviewed and considered seriously by the commission. If there's a desire for additional studies because of the intensity of the use, such as the traffic impact study, those can be requested. I believe Duke is already preparing to submit a traffic impact study for this site. So, those things will be looked at seriously. It's not an automatic approval of any I-1 use that's permitted.
Right.
Any other comments, questions? Okay.
If none, okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a zoning map amendment to rezone the subject property located at 33 West 300 Illinois Route 38 from the B4 Business District to the I-1 Light Industrial District, subject to the findings of fact contained in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Celeste, please call the roll.
Halleman, nay.
Madaskil, aye.
Mead, aye.
Slivka, aye.
Moran, aye.
Stocking eye. All right, very good. So that goes to council.
Yeah, so as the previous public hearing agenda items this evening, this request will go before the city council on Monday December 20th at 7 p.m. right here in the City Council chambers.
Okay, so we have the last item on our agenda. It's a concept review. It's Geneva Route 38 Logistics Center, proposed light industrial development of 19.96 acres. The location is 33 West 300 Illinois Route 38's PIN number is 12-01-426-019 and 12-12-200-021. The applicant is Duke Realty. And again, emphasize the thing, this is not a formal recommendation process, or we don't make any final determinations on this. We deal with this probably, I don't know, probably a dozen or more times a year where applicants come for us with an idea and ask for comments. And the commission will give some feedback, and we give a little give and take, and there can be questions from the audience as well. But again, this is solely a conceptual proposal. It is not a formal request. We are not going to vote on it in any way, shape, or form. It does not go to council, city council. Okay? With that, let's move forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Dan Ubelar. I'm a Senior Development Services Manager at Duke Realty. Just here to speak and hopefully answer any other questions that haven't already come up on the site plan tonight. I appreciate the explanation and all the feedback from commissioners so far and the public included. Again, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, and others have as well, we're here tonight to present this concept plan to be fully transparent with what we intend to develop this property with. It is not a bait and switch. It is not us figuring out a way to get it through at the bare minimum and tell you that we're going to meet the zoning requirements. When we tell you that we've presented a plan conceptually that meets to the best of our ability the zoning regulations and within the I-1 district, that is our intention. And perhaps more importantly, as well as the zoning standards and zoning regulations, the performance standards of the city of Geneva as well. So as David mentioned, there's plenty of other things that can hold up a by right, by zoning development, but those things are things that we would obviously want you guys to consider with this proposal as well. So I'll dive right into it, and I'm obviously a little behind here. I should have pulled up my other slide before I started speaking. Sorry, 1 second here. It's a little blurry here, but as you've seen in the staff report, the building conceptually that we're proposing is a roughly 274,800 square foot single load light industrial facility, auto parking facing Route 38 with the truck docks and trailer parking, kind of tucked away on the rear side of the building in the rear yard, facing the adjacent industrial use. We are proposing at this point 274 auto parking stalls. That's not an accident. Our heaviest user typically in a light industrial application, they may request up to one parking space per 1,000 square feet of building space. Whether or not that all gets built or not, we'll see depending on who the tenant is, but that's kind of the max build-out capacity that this site can offer. And that's usually what we aim for an application like this. Zoning code for the I-1, I believe, requires, I had it written down, and it's in the report, 183 car parking spaces for a building of this size. So we've got a bit of a surplus there with 91 spaces that we're providing in excess of what code requires. We may lose a few of those, here or there, depending on what happens when we design the landscape, for example. We may have to put in some more tree island or parking space, landscape islands for additional shade trees, so, you know, parking spots can fluctuate by the time final engineering is completed. But at the end of the day, you know, we are staying within, under the maximum allowable lot coverage, which is 80%. We're at 62. We've got a building floor area ratio of 31.6% on this site, well below the maximum allowed in the I-1 district. This plan intends to meet the 20-foot parking setback along Route 38, all of the side yard, rear yard setbacks. With great excess, meets the 40-foot building setback, 40-foot building setback along Route 38. And again, these are all things that will be, you know, further engineered, further designed, and presented, you know, as a formal site plan review application at a later time. But conceptually, this is our plan. We are working with the city's electrical division already, as well as the engineering department. We've gotten feedback from WBK, the city's outside engineering consultant, who's already commented, and we've been working in conjunction with Kimley Horn, our civil engineer over here, to just, you know, solicit their feedback early on to make sure that we're, you know, addressing concerns up front. I know that our neighbor to the east has submitted some concerns about this site flooding. We're aware of that, and we, believe it or not, don't want to buy a site or operate a site that floods either. So our engineers, who are really good and have been doing this for a really long time, you know, will design this site from an engineering standpoint that will meet all the city and county stormwater ordinances. And ultimately, this site, as designed and constructed, will function better, much better, and much more in an improved condition than it does today. So I could continue to babble on, but you know, as far as a product that Duke likes to build, this is a very typical, you know, light industrial use for us. This is our wheelhouse. We have a lot of product like this in the Chicago market and across the country, as Josh alluded to. You know, this is the kind of building that we love to build, and we'd love to bring it here to Geneva too. So I'd love to open up the floor to any questions that you guys have. We're here for feedback so that when we move into this next phase, assuming the rezone gets approved, we are, you know, we're all working together here. So.
All right, appreciate it. Yes, John.
Couple questions. Well, I like the truck yard facing the adjacent industrial uses and the auto parking up front. I think it softens it, puts the appropriate face to the back and the appropriate face to the front. For a building of this size, I'm sure your preference would be to solicit and find one tenant. But how divisible is this, and what would your reasonable expectation be for how many tenants we might see in here? You could have at least two corner offices. You might be able to put something in the middle too. I'm not sure.
Preferably one tenant. Not unusual to go to two. Not unheard of to go to three.
Right.
I believe, based on the electrical loads that we've been working with so far, I think we're planning for two tenant.
Okay.
But we have and could go up to three. But again, I say our ideal scenario is that we land one tenant for the whole building.
Okay. You know, a building of this size today, what's the typical height? 38 foot clear?
We build most of our buildings at a 36-foot clear height. We'll go to a 32 in the right scenario. The taller of which, the 36-foot clear height, typically the top of the building itself, when you factor in the parapet walls, go around 44 feet tall, typically. And I believe in the I-1 zoning district, the max height is 50 feet, so we stay below that.
Okay. On the site plan, you've got two ingress egress points. The one to the far west looks like it's right in, right out only, probably, because I think there's an island in the middle of 38 right there.
Correct. We have actually already shared this plan with IDOT.
Okay.
Their feedback initially was that a full access point on our eastern access point will be permitted, and it's actually the median on Route 38 is already set up for that. It'll just require some minor striping modifications on that eastbound left-hand turn lane that would turn into the site as you head eastbound.
right.
The west site access point, as you pointed out, early feedback from IDOT is that a 3/4 access point is what they would want to see there. So that would be a right in, right out, left in.
Okay,
But
okay.
no left out. So anyone coming out of the site from the western access point would not be able to turn, left,
Right.
getting turned around here, and go east out of the site.
They go west and either go north or south on Correct
Correct.
Road or
Correct.
somehow
So
meander.
really out eastbound, or anyone heading outbound to the site and heading east, would have to use the eastern access point.
Eastern access point, and there won't be enough traffic to warrant a light at that point.
No, this type of use generates very, I mean, all things considered, very low traffic volume.
Right.
It wouldn't warrant a signal, and most likely.
Okay. Other than that, I mean, I think it fits the site well. I like the orientation of it. Yeah, I think that I really can't poke any holes in it, so.
Thank you. Appreciate your feedback.
You bet.
Tim?
Can I ask, and I'm sure you've explored this with the assessor, is there any idea what tax revenue is going to be generated on, perhaps on a tax per square foot basis at this point?
Ooh, I have an engineering background. I am not your guy. Let me pass you up back to Josh.
Give me that one.
Yeah, I can just say you never know, but we look at comparable properties. We did reach out to some tax consultants, and we think that this particular building will generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 a year in property taxes. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the only question I have.
Okay. Becca?
I have two questions. First, do you anticipate this to be a 24-hour facility? Trucks you mentioned and.
You want to take that? Yeah.
That's another non-engineering question.
So this question comes up all the time. Obviously, everyone would always prefer to have, 8 to 5. As speculative development or developers, we can't impose use restrictions because it would preclude us from, from users that didn't necessarily need to be doing a lot at, 24 hours a day, but they want access to the building. So almost every single proposal that we get as owners says in the proposal, tenant gets 24/7 access to the building. And we live with that.
So that could be trucks coming in or leaving?
It could be.
It could be any variety of.
It could be. I mean, where that usually becomes a problem is a lot of those properties that abut huge R1 residential areas where people are sleeping and whatnot. We've tactfully put our docks facing industrial zoning so that that would not be an issue.
Right.
But again, we couldn't put a use restriction on it, but most of the time, many of the users don't need access to the building at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
And then you talked before about the LEED certification. I wonder if you could just sort of speak to that, like what level and how different things that you.
Yeah, so I actually came over from a development company that never built LEED buildings, so I'm certainly not an expert in LEED certification. We build our buildings to a LEED certification. I think it's one of the lower LEED certifications, but it's still LEED certification nonetheless. Our competition, for the most part, is not doing LEED certification. We are big on ESG and environmental, social governance. As I said, we own these buildings a very, very long time. We don't intend to sell. We care about that stuff, so we take the initiative to do LEED. But I believe it's just the basic LEED certification. I don't believe it's like a LEED Gold like you'd see in a hotel or apartment building.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Yes, I think the site plan is well done. I think it's looked very efficient, makes good use of the site. And really, this is kind of a small thing, but I know you've oriented the trucks toward the back and the industrial area, but I think on the western part of the site, the multi-tenant building south of Hartside, I think that's the front of that building, is that right, that would be facing the docks? So I just wonder if there's an opportunity to maybe even slide the trailer parking a bit to the east in the back, not on the building itself, but at the back of the property line, and have an opportunity for a little bit more landscaping in that area to screen that building.
We can certainly take a look at that. I mean, I know that back setback, I believe that's either 20 or 25 feet. We could take a look at that. Again, at the end of the day, it's a balancing act usually. The thought that comes to my mind with your comment is that as long as we can make sure our detention requirements are met, as the farther we slide those trailer parking stalls over to the east, the more we cut into that pond, that east pond. Now that said, our west pond could grow. So as long as we toe that line and get that balancing act to work, we can definitely look into that. But I will note that, and we will make sure that regardless, we'll provide an adequate green buffer to screen the trailers from that neighbor.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, do you have anything? I just have one thing on the eastern side of the property next to the Cots Farm item. I think there's some mature trees in there. If you could preserve those, I would appreciate that. Along that boundary line in there. So I think it's fairly wooded through there. So if you could preserve some of that and not just go in there and wipe that out, it would be nice.
We have, it should have wrapped up this week, performed a tree survey, and we'll be preparing a tree preservation plan.
Some of the specimen trees in there would be good.
Yeah, there are a few high quality trees in there. There's some scrubby stuff, but there's some high quality stuff in there. If there's anything that we can preserve on that eastern property line boundary there between us and Couts Farm, we'll definitely attempt to do that. It makes sense for us as much as for the neighbor as well. You know, it's a easy day one screening and mature vegetation. We don't shy away from that stuff. So we're not out to knock every tree down if we don't have to.
Okay. And then we haven't discussed anything on the western boundary with that's adjacent to residential, but I assume you'll have some berming or something in there to limit the visual impact.
Yes.
The residents that are along that western.
Yes, and actually, not to get into engineering weeds that I didn't want to go down, but our electrical feed will come from that western side.
Okay.
So there's already an easement and a buffer that we're going to have to stay out of. This detention pond you see here is kind of is still being refined.
Yeah.
But we will have quite a bit of green buffer on the west side of the property there, where we have to stay away from some water and electric utilities anyways. And I believe by the time that we get this thing graded out and that final engineering figured out, there will end up being some sort of elevation change or buffer over there on that side that,
nice.
In addition to landscape screening, we'll have quite a bit of good screening to the neighbors. And then Joe also pointed out, and he was kind enough to do a quick takeoff. I think, Rebecca, you asked a question about how far the neighbors to the west were from us. Those neighbors the houses are about 350 feet just to the closest pavement line, and then another about 50 feet from there to the building. So we're looking at about 400 feet away from the building to the actual neighbor's home themselves. So quite a bit of distance there. Most of that is green space or detention pond that, we'll have screening or buffering from them. And there's already some existing vegetation on that west side anyways. So it's going to be a pretty significant screening setup over there on the west side. So I kind of was answering your question, but wanted to go back to hers
That's
too.
perfect.
So,
No, that's good. That's what we're trying to do, is just give you lots of feedback. So, and then you've got some detention ponds in the front as well there along the parking.
Correct. Those are mostly just to pick up parking lot surface runoff. All the storm ponds will be tied together via pipes. And I hope I don't speak out of turn. Jamie will come up here and kick me if I do. But most of the time when we have multiple ponds on a site, they're connected via some kind of a flat equalizer pipe.
Yeah.
So as long as, the water can drain into one area, but ultimately outfalls to the northeast. So that water will kind of come off. It'll get the water that hits the front auto parking lot will come off into those ponds.
That's the first
and
part.
ultimately head north to outfall from the site.
And then obviously, it sounds like from your presentation that you've put the spec building on there if you went to the maximum parking. So you're basically showing maximum parking at this stage. Depending on the tenant, it could be less.
It's pretty much maxed out, yep. We obviously want to always meet code, meet the bare minimum for code. Some tenants need more, some tenants need less. We get people that come in and say, we need 30 parking spaces. We're like, well, we have 300, you know, and we may have a user that comes in and say, we need 183, and we'll build code and have those future spots, you know, available for later if they decide to expand or they hire more people and need more. So this is just kind of showing the maxed out scenario. Same goes with the docks on the rear side of the building. We show the maxed out scenario, kind of max build what we could fit. Our typical standard, if we just built this as spec without a tenant, is we go for like 1 dock per 10,000 square feet. So we'd be looking at putting in roughly 28 docks or so day one, but this building could potentially have up to just below 50, I think.
Okay.
So they're kind of just showing max scenarios at this point.
No, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, anybody on the public who'd like to make comments at this time? Sir, are you wanting to speak? Okay. Please come forward. State your name and address.
Richard Schultz, 204 Dearborn Court, Unit 122. I know it's been covered by one of the commissioners over here, but all our units front to the loading docks on this plan, and I want to make sure there's adequate screening so my tenant doesn't look back at trucks all day.
I think that's some of the things that we were talking about in terms of you're talking on the northern boundary?
Yep.
Yes, there was some comment, I think Commissioner Slifka made that comment, is to be sensitive, since that's the front of that adjacent neighbor to the north, to put some screening in there, or possibly remove some of those
Berm or
parking
something, or a
spaces.
fence line.
Yeah, so we've definitely highlighted that as a possibility to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And just to piggyback on that, there is a perimeter landscaping requirement, and I believe it's 1 shade tree for every 60 feet. So that's just something to keep in mind, that they will need to have those trees installed.
Some landscaping along the northern boundary.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else wishing to comment at this time here in City Hall? Okay, nobody here in City Hall wishing to comment. Anybody online who wishes to comment on this matter, please use the raised hand function so you can be recognized.
The commission now calls upon Carl Batchke. Carl, please unmute yourself and proceed with your with your comment.
Comments. Are you with us?
Carl, I believe you're self-muted. Go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with, yeah, there we go.
Okay. I think I'm live. Thank you. Sorry about that. Carl Botchke, 538 Lexington Drive, in Geneva. I appreciate the proposed or conceptual site plan. What I would ask the developer to consider is to maximize any buffer space on the western edge of that property where we do have residential development, just to be considerate of those residents, appreciating the fact that they do have light industrial around them. It's still their home, and take that into consideration. So thank you for hearing my comments.
Thank you. Okay, anyone that's watching online who wishes to speak on this matter, please raise your hand so we can recognize you. All right, nobody, I'm being told no one's on, so one more time, anybody who wishes to speak on this matter who's watching virtually, please raise your hand so you can be recognized. Okay. All right, so hopefully you got good feedback, something to work on. So we appreciate your time, and thanks for presenting. I appreciate it. I think everybody does. Thank you. All right, so to wait a little bit.
Told my wife I thought we'd be here till 9.
All right, so we got a couple other items on the agenda. So item number 7 is public comment. So we open it up for anyone who wishes to address the commission, and that includes people virtually. So if anybody wishes to make a comment to us just in general, please let us know. Raise your hand. Yes. Just general comments. Public comment period.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Hendrik Reich. Based on the discussion today and the experiences of the prior months, I would say maybe we could mitigate some of the risks and unknowns by revising or reviewing the zoning ordinance, what we define as I1, I2, and all that, and maybe add some of those building types that are currently not in there. For example, a crosstalk. So if we add a crosstalk as an I2, we would automatically have another safeguard in there to prevent that from being brought in as an I1 or planned unit development. I don't know what the process is and if this is the right commission, but I did want to encourage that and maybe also do that in collaboration with the Strategic Planning and Advisory Committee, I think that's their name, to see that the zoning ordinance is in line with the city's overall strategic goals.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that comment. Thank you. Anybody else online? I think that's it for City Hall. Anybody online who wishes to speak? All right, we don't have anybody, so that's it for the public comment. Other business, what do we got coming?
All right, so I'll turn my mic on. We have a couple things that we'd like to discuss with the commission, but we'll start out with current projects. So most recently, I guess, a starfish animal rescue request to allow, and it was an animal, it's slipping my mind.
Animal rescue excluding boarding and kenneling.
Yes. So that was taken to.
That's unique.
Yes.
How do you do that, by the way? You find somebody immediately to take the animal?
You do. That's where we get our dogs.
Facility, yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Give them to foster homes.
Like
or
right away?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was taken to the city council on Monday, December 6th, and that was approved by city council.
Okay.
Other than that, we have 3 items this evening, obviously. We still have, we have Delnor Hospital. They are requesting a PUD expansion and site plan review of the cancer center expansion. That will take place at a public hearing on January 13th. The public hearing will be for the PUD expansion. They're not required to have a public hearing for the site plan review. Another public hearing coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission will be another porch variation at 140 North Harrison Street. We're anticipating bringing that to the January 13th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We will not have a meeting that would typically be scheduled on the 4th Thursday of the month because that is Christmas Eve observed and City Hall will be closed. And a new project that was just uploaded today, I'm not sure if anybody's had an opportunity to check it out yet, but there is a Verizon wireless communication tower proposed at the Oscar Swan property. They
Really?
are, it's a proposed concealed wireless communication facility that would be disguised as a tree, so a monopine, I guess, based on past discussions we've had. I believe that's what they call it. Right now, staff is reviewing that submittal. They will have to have a special use for that to occur. So they'll be bringing a special use application before the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing, and that'll eventually go to City Council.
May I ask, is it the same applicant as before?
This is a different applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else regarding projects?
I
I think that's all of them.
We have one other that's currently in review right now, but, or I guess two.
Dunkin'
But
But
they're not
those
ready.
are, yeah, they're not ready at this time. The second thing that we wanted to discuss was, with the commission, was the Planning and Zoning Commission training that took place earlier, I guess it was last month in November. We just wanted to get some general feedback from the commission, just your thoughts on that training. If you want us to continue, like, letting you know about upcoming trainings. And also, well, I guess we could start there. How did we feel about the training, and do we want to continue to do others?
Well,
Go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead and turn on your mic. Your mic.
I'm sorry. As the newbie, I found it very informative. The speakers were compelling. They were actually somewhat entertaining. And that's pretty difficult these days when you've become Zoom burned out like most of us have. But I thought it was very well done, and to the extent there are additional opportunities for informative sessions like that, I for one, would find them very useful.
Okay.
I would agree. I think as an old bee, it's always good to take a step back and, in a quiet moment, reflect on just life in the trenches and how to best do things and best practices. And it was good to see representation from across the county or across the.
John, did you participate in the one we had here in City Hall like
Did we have one
two
at
years
City
ago?
Hall, or
maybe?
did we have one at Roquette or at?
Yeah, that was several years ago.
Yeah, I
But I
was
think
in
the
that.
more recent one was maybe 2018-ish.
I don't recall coming here, and I might have just been.
I think it's
I was working then. I might have been traveling. So.
My take was it was much improved.
Okay. Okay.
I think they took the feedback from the last sessions
Okay.
to heart.
Same sponsors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really made some changes to kind of eliminate some of the unnecessary presentations and focus on the issues we deal with.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? I think, Adam, you participated, John and Tim, and then we also had Alderwoman Amy Mayer.
Yeah, I did as well.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, no, I thought, I actually thought it was very good, and not a lot of it was new, but it was certainly a good refresher of a lot of things, and I did think it was much better than the one that was here. You know, I stayed on it for the whole time, so, you know.
But you love Zoom.
Got your $20 worth.
But I think we had good representation from the city. Yeah, and then Alderman Brad Kosterog also participated.
Right.
But, yeah, okay. But one thing that they brought up in that training was how we put together staff reports or how we present information to the commission. And so I guess we wanted to get feedback from the commission on how the reports are set up. Do we like the way that they're set up? Could there be additional information that we would like to see? Could there be anything omitted that maybe we don't really need to have in the report? Yeah, I guess we can
Yeah, I mean,
start.
we obviously prepare a rather detailed staff report, draft findings for the commission to consider. We don't typically do a presentation of our report.
Right.
Some communities do that, where staff will kind of introduce the project and give just a general presentation. If you attended the training, some of the feedback there is sometimes it makes staff look like a proponent for the applicant. And certainly that's not always the case. You know, even if it complies with all the plans, that's not our role. Our role is to present that information to the commission. So we're certainly willing to do that if that's helpful, and maybe answer some of your questions before we get into the public hearing. But if you don't think that's necessary, that's fine too.
I like the fact that you put together a report with the findings of fact that we have an opportunity to amend if we don't agree with what's in there. And I like the fact that we go in knowing that in some scenario or from some perspective, all these standards could be met. We may end up disagreeing with that, and that's okay. But I also like the fact that you do not take a position. You officially say that the staff will form a recommendation after the public hearing and after the commission has had a bite at the apple. So I think that's appropriate. I think it's a good balance, the way you do it, personally. So.
Yeah, I think it's efficient. The staff reports are very well done. I think And it's shown in the meetings, because there's not a whole lot of follow-up questions, so.
Right.
I mean, if we do have questions on the report, we ask during the meeting, so I think it's efficient utilization of time that, if we have a question in the staff report, we'll ask it. But, there's no need to walk through it. We have it, public has it, so it's out there.
Right.
I think, yeah, as David was saying, if we're accused anyway, it'll already be like it's a done deal. I mean, staff presenting the project is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
We'll let the applicant take the burden on that.
I was just going to say that, I get to see a lot of staff reports on planning and zoning cases, and I think what you do here is very good, so I wouldn't change it.
Thank you.
Takes a lot of time, definitely.
We got, and we appreciate that. We really appreciate that you read them. Sincerely.
Yeah,
And it's like,
and I
everybody
think-
reads them.
And again, I'm
you
not
know.
going to speak for the commission, but personally on me, I appreciate the time you guys spend. I mean, I know you spend a lot of time getting this thing. We've had very few applications for us that were not ready, and the only ones that we've had that are not ready, the applicants forced you to do it against your advice. And so, in general, when it comes before us, it's ready and not before. And I appreciate that.
Well, anytime you have any questions, let us know. Any suggested revisions, let us know, and we're happy to change the format up and switch it up if we need to.
I think for all your hard work, you guys should at least take at least 6 cookies each home.
It looks like we'll have to.
What is the deal with the cookies?
Otherwise,
What's that?
Anna's
What's the
been
deal
looking
with the
at them
cookies?
all meeting, so.
We like to say thank you at least once a year for all the
Well, that's
meetings.
from you.
Yeah, all the meetings you guys sit through, and
We could have been eating this whole time?
everybody has rejected it. Nobody told
I had a
John.
cookie.
Poor John, nobody told poor John.
I thought that was left over from this afternoon, or
Have a cookie, John.
So I have the soda, I had a
Yeah.
cookie.
how late can I stay?
Grab
eating?
one.
Go for
Grab
it.
one on the way out.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, make sure Celeste gets whatever she needs.
The regret I do have about tonight, though, is that the tree was not lit in the corner.
Oh, no.
That was a missed opportunity
Uh-oh.
to bring us
I was gonna
some
say something.
holiday
I said there's a
spirit.
tree over
but-
That's
there,
right,
but
that's right.
it's not- it needs something, and that's what it was.
Sometimes when we have potentially more controversial hearings, that's when it feels like there's a tone in the room that, as someone said, maybe it was you, Scott, that we're a rubber stamp, or we've known about this for a long time. The public doesn't understand all the time how much lead time there is from when a project comes in to when it's validated by you and vetted by you to a point where you're ready to unveil it to us to consider. So, we have a meeting on a Thursday. We typically pick that up Monday at the police station, and we're devouring, that's what we eat for the next 3 days. Same as the public. And it might serve us good sometimes to lay that out and lay the process out on something that might be more controversial, just so the public understands that, we've gotten this, we've gotten explained to us, we're digesting it right along with them, and we're asking questions in kind of real time. We didn't start talking about this as a commission 6 months ago when it walked in the door, or a year ago when it walked in the door. We've seen it on the website, and if we have the initiative enough, we can go look at it and see if anything's updated. But we're not in a position to know what the ask is, or to know what we even think about it until that week, right? So it's just, we might do ourselves a service to take a step back and lay that out in a non-confrontational but non-emotional way, just so that it's understood that we're kind of working in real time here with them, so.
Yeah, I think educating the public is important, because I think, in their opinion, they think that all of us are discussing this behind the scenes
Right.
prior to the meeting.
Right.
Which is not the case.
Right.
And, being part of this committee, I've realized like how transparent, and it really has impressed me in being part of the committee, how truly transparent and organized and structured we really are, and people just believe that we're, talking on the phone, emailing each other about all the discussions
Right.
prior to, when we've formed a decision, before stepping in here, and that's not the case.
Right, and from our training, we know we can't talk.
We can't,
on the side.
exactly, right.
The, part of that, just for an example, like when we had the pharmacy come, I was surprised to learn that they had already broken ground and were doing work on the property before having it actually approved. So I think sometimes that's where that comes from, not even from us. I mean, we are very transparent, but sometimes when that kind of information is out there, like you already have your permits, you're already doing these things on the property, then it does sound like, there's a rubber stamp process that's going on.
Right.
It certainly doesn't help perception.
It doesn't, and I've often wondered about that, like how do they get permits to do this when they,
Well, they're getting a permit to do
Demolition.
the physical work to the building. They're not getting a
Right.
permit for the use of the building.
but why would they be
So,
doing the demolition without assuming that they're already gonna
Like
get
in
it?
that
They're taking
case,
a
there
risk.
was a very short window, and
Yeah.
there was an assumed risk by the property
Thanks.
owner.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
If the
Yeah.
text amendment wasn't approved, that would have been money
On them,
wasted.
yeah, but I think just to
They
your
were
point.
willing to take that risk.
That sort of contributes to that idea of like, oh,
Right.
the city's already decided that this is happening.
Right.
Like, I was a little surprised with they said they didn't want the permits, they want to do the drive-through, but yet there was no application for a drive-through. So, just as an example, my mind kind of goes to the same place, like, well, that's not even on the table yet, so, if that's so important, why wouldn't that be a part of the initial application as well? But it's a different issue, but just,
Right.
And I think, on a somewhat related note, and we saw it again tonight, one gentleman came up and he said he had just found out about this. And the notice requirements are 2 letters and a posting, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's important to explain that those aren't our rules. We're not
Right.
trying to blow this past you. These are state laws.
Right.
And in fact, if we wanted to give more notice, we cannot, because it could be injurious to the rights of the applicant. So
Actually, we do go above and beyond the state requirement. The state requirement is 1 notice, 15 to 30 days prior to the public hearing. I want to say it was 5 years ago, maybe. We kept hearing that same story, that I'm just finding out about this, I'm just finding out about this.
Yeah, we did go.
So the city, the planning commission and city council approved changes where we send a notice within 5 days of receiving the application. We post it on the website, and then we send a second notice once the public hearing is scheduled. So everybody within that, and instead of 250 feet, which is the state requirement, we bump that up to 500 feet.
that's great.
So we have we exceed that minimum statutory requirement for
Further
notice.
outreach out there too, they can always, register to the site so they can get notices direct. I mean,
Right,
there's
right.
And we
there's
put that
other
in the
things
flyers too.
There's other things that we're doing to help that, but yeah, we're always gonna be chasing that a little bit because people, whatever, just don't stay in touch and they're busy.
Sure.
And then suddenly, all of a sudden, something happens and then.
Right.
And some of the larger applications, I mean, they take several months to go through staff
Sure,
review.
sure.
But that initial notice kind of, gives them advance notice that,
Something's up.
yeah, something is coming,
Right.
and it might be several months, but, that's definitely, I think, a good thing for transparency.
For sure, yeah.
I also think that some of those comments are just easy ones to make when you're opposed to a project.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of cast a doubt on the process.
Well, and we come in informed because we've had a good packet to read. So it may appear, boy, you act like you've known about this for a long time. But we know a lot of the detail because we've had a very good explanation of it for 72 hours or whatever, so. Dunkin' Donuts?
I was waiting for it. I thought maybe we distracted you with the cookie.
I need a cup of coffee with this cookie.
it's
So
just Dunkin' now.
Oh, that's
that is-
true.
that
That's
is
true.
true. It is just
Drop
Dunkin'.
the donut.
Just make that.
They have, their permit had expired with the city, so they need to resubmit their permit application, but there was a couple, they were 99% done, but they needed to submit a temporary construction easement for the East State Street construction project, was a condition of their special use. We did get that recorded document this week,
Okay.
so that condition's been met, and then they needed to secure a permit from IDOT, which they are in the process of applying for.
Question on that. They used the same two ingress and egress points on 38 that the previous owner had, but they put a right-in only or something off of the side street. Is that what they have to get approved because it's close enough to 38? What's potentially a holdup with IDOT?
Both access points are being
Both that are on
reviewed
38?
On 38.
But they were already existing, but the IDOT, because it's a change in...
A change in use, they're viewing it as a change in use.
Okay.
That requires additional review.
And they then look at traffic patterns within the site and how traffic will come out.
Right, and the access points that are there today are part of the approved engineering plans for the East State Street construction project. But because of the change in use, they think there might be modifications necessary. So they're going through that review process with IDOT currently.
And that's something they could have done a long time ago.
Yes, sir.
Should have done it.
From day one, they should have been doing
Yeah,
it.
right?
Right, why even build it if you don't know if you can get cars in
Concrete's
there?
been poured.
It's a walk-up,
Kinda late in the game
walk-up
now. If
Dunkin'
they come
only.
back with something, they're sort of like,
Walk.
well, we're
It's a walkthrough.
99% done with the project.
Yeah, right.
Do we walk away? I don't think so.
You gotta walk your donut off.
That's crazy. All right.
But, yeah, as of this week, it sounds like they are making progress, and hopefully,
Because they could open tomorrow if they had, well, first of all, hiring people is gonna be a challenge.
Yeah.
It says hiring in the window, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been out there
Yeah.
for months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I appreciate you. It just wouldn't be a meeting.
It
without
wouldn't, it wouldn't.
the
I won't mention it till next year.
deal.
Do I have a motion? Mim's not with us.
Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
You.
All right.
All right.